I'm a single father raising 3 girls. I no longer get food stamps or housing, so I have to make up the difference, having to work on Shabbat, driving buses.
There is no such thing as having to work on Shabbat. There are jobs, lots of them, that don't work on Shabbat. There are lots of shifts you can take during the week and work double shifts and work 2 different jobs and everything else. Nobody has to work on Shabbat. So I don't understand that phrase.
Would it be okay after Shabbat ends to go to the store and buy on a Saturday night? I've seen people online debating about this.
Lots of people like to waste their time debating about dumb things. Shabbat is a 24-hour period, and when it's over, it's over.
My granddaughter spends a lot of time with me after school. Is it okay to teach about God and Yeshua and to pray since her parents are not religious? She is 6 and curious why her mom does not.
That child is not yours. You grandparents need to respect the child's parents. It's not your authority. Oh, but it's my kid. No, it's not your kid. So this is a question you need to ask the parent.
From Richard Granger, this one's 2 parts. Is it acceptable to keep my second tithe money in a high-yield savings account as opposed to regular savings or checking in order to keep it separated from other finances and allow it to build interest as long as it's in my bank? They use the money, so why not build interest on it between feasts?
No, that's just wisdom. I mean, if you're going to have money sitting, it should be earning interest at least. Okay, any of you that have money just sitting in a bank and it's not earning anything, that's just doesn't make any sense, all right? It literally doesn't make any sense. All right, which doesn't make any sense either because they don't have pennies anymore. All right, so that really doesn't make any sense. I said this in one of the zone meetings. If you have your second or third tithe money in an account, or first tithe money for that matter, in an account earning interest, remember it's increasing the tithe. You don't have to do additional tithing on it, so it just increases that tithe that then you go ahead and give. Okay, so that tithe just got larger that way, okay? All right, so you don't need to tithe on the interest, you're not keeping it. It's going to whatever it earned interest on. Okay, so there's no reason to do more tithing on it, it's already in a tithe account. So if it's second tithe, it's going to be used for feasts. And then if it's excess at the end of the feast cycle, you're going to just give it in. And if it's first tithe, you're going to just give it in. And if it's third tithe, you're going to give it in the third year like you're supposed to. Okay? So if it grows, good, let it grow.
All right, from Gerald Monroe, is there biblical instruction to count the omer, or is it to count the days and weeks? Where did the phrase count the omer originate?
Okay, so it's the Hebrew involved in there. I don't remember exactly what the word means and how that plays out, but it's counting of the omer is, again, the Hebrew that is connected to counting the time between the wave sheaf and Shavuot. Okay? Now remember, omer is the amount of wheat in the, when we, as a weight of measure, right? So when did the phrase start? I don't know, whenever the Jews started using that phrase as what they would link to the counting. But it's the counting of the time from the waving of the sheaf to Shavuot. And so this is how things develop into terms that we use. Okay? It's just like people say that I'm going to do a mikvah. You don't do a mikvah. You go to a place called a mikvah to do an immersion. Okay? A mikvah is the place you do it. But over time, it's evolved into meaning both. Okay? But the mikvah is the actual place you go to immerse. All right? You have these mikvah pools all throughout Israel. You see in the archaeological digs and the excavations, and they find these things. Okay? And then it's tavila that you do, which is to immerse in the mikvah.
All right. From Becoming Peculiar, can you speak on Revelation 2:9 and 3:9? Is it speaking of the lineage that is in Jerusalem now? If not, who is it speaking about?
All right, my first answer was going to be, when you said, can you speak on? I was going to say no. All right, we don't do eschatology, but let me just see if this is a simple enough question because of the way you asked the question here. Let's see. Oh, I see what you're getting at. No, look, I covered all of this I don't remember where I covered this, in the Hasatan teaching. Okay, this is where it says things like, I know your works, those who say they are of the Yehudim or not, but are a congregation of Satan. Okay, that is covered in the Hasatan teaching. Okay, I don't know what part. Okay, I could look it up somewhere. Shamish, Gary, could probably type it in and figure it out, and you'll see that in the chat there for people that are on the chat. But it's in the Hasatan teaching, okay? But no, it's not speaking of the lineage that is in Jerusalem now, okay? It's talking about people that claim they are covenanted, but they act like adversaries, okay? It's just a simple thing, all right? They claim to be covenanted, but Hasatan means the adversary. They act as enemies and adversaries to the walk.
From Michelle Castillo, is it okay to eat imitation crab? I saw a video that said that it is made from whitefish, so are we allowed to eat it?
All right. You can't eat crab. If it's not really crab, that's fine. Now, the potential hypocrisy, I guess, if they flavor it so it tastes like crab and you're trying to have your crab and eat it too, so to speak. All right. I don't understand that because I never liked crab or shrimp or these other things, okay? So, look, just like you can eat beef bacon and turkey bacon instead of eating pork bacon, all right? And they flavor it to taste like bacon. Now, does it taste like pork bacon? Not exactly. Okay, if you've tried all of three, they all have a different sort of taste to it. All right, I love beef bacon. Okay, somebody when I was in New Zealand, they had a lot of people eating chicken bacon also. So this, it is what it is, but it's made to be flavored. Yes, so you can eat anything that's not unclean. If they want to shape it to look like and everything else to be like, that's up to you if that is fine with you or not. I don't really get it, but I grew up having had all of these unclean things. I didn't like any of them except the bacon, and so I'm very happy to eat, beef bacon instead, or turkey bacon. I'm good with both of those, or vegetarian, those are good too. So no, you're fine to go ahead and eat imitation, anything that's not, made out of the unclean things.
All right, this one kind of seems like a working situation. It says, from Family Archuleta, Rabbi, I've taken the incentive of your suggestion to find a job at a higher pay as a blade operator, but now having to work Shabbat due to state assistance, it's been taken away to make up for it being lost. I'm a single father raising 3 girls. I no longer get food stamps or housing, so I have to make up the difference having to work on Shabbat driving buses. And as I speak, I'm in the bus.
Okay. It's hard for me to give responses to things like this without having the actual interaction to ask enough questions to really know what's the situation. So I don't want to judge the situation too hardly or misguess, but I'm going to say this, okay? There is no such thing as having to work on Shabbat. There are jobs, lots of them, that don't work on Shabbat. There are lots of shifts you can take during the week and work double shifts and work 2 different jobs and everything else. Nobody has to work on Shabbat. So I don't understand that phrase. I understand that you're not making enough money because when you made more than you were supposed to, according to the government, they took away some assistance because now you don't qualify for it anymore. But I would like to believe that you made more money making money than you made on assistance, okay? But no, you don't have to work on Shabbat. You live in America, there's jobs, okay? You can go get shifts at fast food places or any place else to do whatever you need to do and just work other shifts, okay? Now you might say, well, but I have a kid that I have to take care of and this and that, I'm a single dad. Okay, fine. That could be a little bit tough. But these are all life choices that you made that put you in this place. So I don't know what to do with that. My answer to you is, if this is the situation you're in now, you need to figure out a way or a path out of this as fast as you can make it work, all right? Again, I'm not saying you have to fix it today. You're driving your bus, you're doing the job you can, you're trying to listen to services and all that kind of stuff. In the meantime, you probably need to just make a phone call and take a licking and whatever else you'd have to take making the phone call. But get some help in talking about what your other alternatives and options are to try to fix your problem, okay? And then call here and have an appointment. I won't be mean or anything like that. I can empathize that people have built themselves a problem or dug themselves into a real bad hole. And so not knowing how to get out of it is really challenging, right? So that being said, we'll try to do what we can to give you some guidance and advice. But in my opinion, okay, nobody has to work on Shabbat. You want to know what that's really like? Let's move you to a place like Yugoslavia, where my in-laws grew up, and I know people from Romania and that sort of area, Yugoslavia, Romania, who actually were put in jail because they wouldn't send their kids to school on Shabbat and wouldn't work on Shabbat. That's a place where you have to work on Shabbat. I'm not saying it's like that now, but that's the way it was. We had a person in our congregation in Knoxville many years ago, this goes back to like 2000, who had been in jail for keeping Shabbat in one of those, Eastern European countries. You're in America, there's no way you get to tell me you had to work on Shabbat. You just got to do a better job of working harder to find something that doesn't work on Shabbat and find a way to tool set and skill set yourself into something that pays more that doesn't work on Shabbat.
All right, so a little nervous about my question. I hope it's not it doesn't open a can of worms. So, but I have some questions about Paul. And yeah, I'm trying to understand him, make sense of the guy. And I want to give this as an example. It's not because I'm trying to advocate or be an advocate for drunkenness. If anything, I don't drink. But, whenever I read the Torah, as far as I'm aware, there is no mention in the Torah where it says drunkenness is a sin. Nowhere at all. I get to Proverbs, and it does mention where it's considered foolishness. And then I get to Paul, where he says in Galatians that drunkenness keeps us away from, or prohibits us from entering into the kingdom. So I'm just like, I read that, and it's just like, I don't think it is, but like, is he adding to the word where like in the Torah, it never is mentioned as sin, and then we get to Paul where it looks like that he is saying it's a sin? Like, would that be an example of like adding to the Torah, if that makes sense?
Where does he say that?
Galatians chapter 5, verse 21.
I was actually looking there too. I thought that was maybe where you were going. Okay. Envy, murders, drunkenness, wild parties, and the like, of which I forewarn you, even as I also have said before, that those who practice such as these shall not inherit the kingdom. Okay, he's listing things that are the fruit of a spirit, okay? The flesh spirit. Remember the comparison of the spirit versus the flesh. And he says, and these are things that the flesh tends to do. Not each singular individual thing in itself, but a person who tends to do all of these things has got their nature is in the wrong place to be thinking about being in the inheritance. Okay, so no, I don't think he's adding to anything. I don't think he's claiming that these singularly, each one of these is some sort of sin that keeps you out of the kingdom. He's comparing the two natures, the flesh nature, okay, and then when we go a couple of verses later, he goes into the spirit nature. And so he's saying if you're in the flesh nature, you're not going to inherit all of this. So I don't think there's a problem there.
Okay, cool, awesome. I kind of figured that was the case. I just wanted to make sure with you.
But it's consistent,
so then,
but it's a consistent, if you look at it through the filter of what I've been teaching for the last 8 or 9 weeks, okay, it's consistent that you see him making this comparison, right? He says, for the flesh, well, let me start this again. I say, walk in the spirit, and you shall not accomplish the lust of the flesh. For the flesh lusts against the spirit. So he's comparing these two things. It's going back to verse 16 and 17, right? So the context is a comparison of flesh and spirit. All right, Anna, so does that make sense? So Paul isn't creating anything new here. He's simply saying, if you're in this approach, nature, mindset, this flesh thing, you're not getting there.
So if I could add to that, I really hope this question makes sense. So forgive me if it doesn't. How do I read Paul? And I guess what I'm wondering about that is just like, I understand his letters were not written for us per se. They were written to the assemblies, the churches at the time. So do I read his words? Obviously, they're not commandments, but do I read them more like words of wisdom or suggestions? I don't know if that makes sense at all.
Okay. So first of all, I wouldn't read Paul. I would let me walk you through Paul whenever I teach Paul. okay, for right now. And then when you have enough of that, you could read Paul and hear me explaining as you're reading it, so that you know what you're reading with the explanation instead of just reading it just as it's written and through the translation. Because the translation isn't just as it was written, but it's the way it's translated, okay? That's number one. Number two is, I would look at Paul like you should be looking at me. In other words, it's an individual trying to give you an understanding of Torah application. Now, he's addressing very specific things in these letters to the different congregations that he was working with. But so I think that you're correct in saying, look at it as advice, insight, guidance in terms of, and also, by the way, Deuteronomy 17, right rulings for his group. There are things that he did make as right rulings that aren't necessarily for all of us, but they were for that group, as he was forced into a situation to make a right ruling. Because people came to him looking for that.
I had to type this out because it got kind of long and was all over the place. So just bear with me. My question now is going to be based in Psalms 119, verses 49 through 54. Okay, so with today being day 30 of the Omer count, and we're working on emotional well-being and the 7 areas of our aspect of life. And tomorrow we're supposed to start developing a plan to implement over the next 3 days. Can you speak on the emotional well-being and the comfort in our affliction in Psalms 119, verse 50, from Yahweh causing us to wait, and the emotional well-being from an emotional well-being standpoint, and then how do we comfort ourselves from remembering the right rulings in verse 52? And the emotional well-being from the laws being our song in verse 54.
All right, look.
Okay.
In verse 50, okay, he says, this is my comfort in my affliction, for your word has given me life. Okay, now, that is built on earlier places where he talks about we're already 50 verses into this where he's been talking about how much he appreciates the law and the right rulings and all the other things and all that kind of stuff. But what is giving him the comfort? Verse 50 is after verse 49, which says, remember the word to your servant on which you have caused me to wait. So he's remembering things that were said to him that haven't happened yet, but that's given him comfort, and he's waiting because he trusts in what was said. How does that apply to us today? Well, we know what he has said. We know the things that he has promised. We know the things that are coming. And even if they haven't happened yet, we should take comfort and in our waiting for it, knowing that it will play out the way he says. Okay? Then you said, verse 52, I remembered your right rulings of old, O Yahweh, and I comfort myself. So part of comforting himself is that he sees and seeing how things were done in the past and how they did play out, the stuff that was promised and did play out. He says, I take comfort in that I've seen in the past that you are true to your word. You are trustworthy. As a matter of fact, we hear a lot of verses where he talks about how he is trustworthy, and other people refer to him as being the trustworthy El, okay? Then in, where else did you go?
54.
Okay, your laws have been my songs in the place of my sojournings. So what was the problem with 54?
It's not a problem. It's just I'm trying to implement a plan to deal with the emotional things, because this whole section is almost like a roller coaster of emotions, and I'm just trying to piece it all together. And the songs, I find comfort in the songs. It's just how do I apply that part as an emotional well-being.
All right, I'll simplify it.
All
right, I'll simplify it.
Add it to it. Mm-hmm.
Okay, I'll simplify it. David, of course, is quite blue, quite emotional, okay? He loves big. He gets upset big. Everything's big, But the main point, though, he's making in the Psalms here, and especially Psalm 119, is that if you can be aware of where you came from, what Yah has already done for you, what he's already promised that will come in the future, and that you can then take comfort in all of that information that you should have. okay? You know, most of our discomfort comes out of fear. Most of our fear comes out of unknown. And so he's making these things known. He's saying, I know what you said. I've seen it in the past. I've seen how it's played through. This comforts me.
All right, from Arlene Capriotti, what about getting a bone graft? It's a dead animal or dead person's bone grafted into yours?
Look, I don't have a real problem with any kind of things like transplants. You know, if you need that, like getting a transplant so that you can live, whether it's like a liver, kidney, or lung, or whatever. Same thing with bones, okay? I mean, if it's compatible and functions in your body, then it's compatible and functions. Remember that the problem is the eating of these things, consuming the actual animal as a meal, okay? As food. That doesn't mean they can't be used in other ways, or chemicals from them can't be used in other ways.
All right, from Earth Girl, are we still obligated monetarily to give the value of lambs, bulls, fine flour, oil, etc. during the appointed times, as Yahweh said we must do in perpetuity, even though there is no temple?
Okay, so what you don't understand is the in perpetuity, okay? All right, those things are linked together with there's no temple. As long as there's a temple, you would have to do this. Now, he does tell you that when you show up, you don't come empty-handed, you make an offering of some sort. In that one, he says, as your heart is led, as you've been blessed. These kind of things that are required for Sabbaths, for feasts, are very specific offerings, etc., to bring it, whatever it is, okay, that accounting for, etc., is a temple thing. Now, if you're talking about the part where it says that when you show up, you say, I've not messed with my tithe, I've not done these things, well, that's not necessarily giving an accounting for it. You're just making a pledge that you've not done something inappropriate with the tithe and offering that you're giving.
All right, from Miss Perez, 1996, question about Shabbat. Would it be okay after Shabbat ends to go to the store and buy on a Saturday night? I've seen people online debating about this.
Well, lots of people like to waste their time debating about dumb things. Okay, all right. Shabbat is a 24-hour period, and when it's over, it's over. So if the sun has gone down on Saturday night, and you're going to want, you know what, you want to go and have a hard time getting into a movie or getting into like a pizza place or a restaurant, try going after sundown on a Saturday night in Queens, okay? Because every Jew is out there doing business. All of their stores open up after sundown, okay? Not like the minute after sundown. They give it a period of time to make sure that it's dark and all that stuff. But they open up, 9 o'clock, whatever it is at night, and they'll be open. And they're all running around to go do business. So no, don't listen to the people wanting to debate about nonsense. Okay, that's just nonsense. Okay? Once the sun has gone down, and if you really want to be safe, make sure it's really actually dark, not just what your phone says sundown is, because your phone's going to say it's sundown technically, and you'll go outside and it's pretty light out. Okay, so I would wait till it's dark. That to me is sundown, all right? Now, but yes, just don't listen to people debating nonsense online.
All right, from Messenger, when someone is raped under the law, the man is required to marry the victim and is not allowed to put her away. It's a violation of her person. How would she be required to live with and bear kids?
All right. This is hard for me to kind of get you guys all to this place. You cannot read all of the scriptural instructional laws out of context of the time that they were written, okay? This was written to discourage men from doing these things, knowing that they will then be obligated to then take care of that woman and not be able to put her away and have to take care and provide for them. Now, bear in mind, this is at a time when women had pretty much no status or rights in any of the cultures, pretty much, okay? This is not written to modern day women. So a modern day woman, you'd be thinking, well, she was violated. How would she be required to live with and bear the kids? Well, if she was violated, she wouldn't be able to live at all if she didn't have a guy to take care of her and live with the kids. So this is to make sure that a man, if he were to do such a thing, would know that you're going to have to take care of that person and provide for them in a way that is appropriate through the laws of the nation and the community of Israel. meaning biblical Israel, okay? So I know you look at this through your 2026 eyes and think, oh my gosh, how could that be allowable? If a woman got raped and the man just disappeared, her life was going to be over pretty much, unless there was some way to preserve and protect her. And this was that way, okay? This was that way. Now, is it perfect? Is it the way you would want it? Not according to 2026, it's not. But this wasn't written in 2026, okay? This was written, 6,000, I guess Moses, about 4,000 years ago, okay? It's written a long time ago. Different world. Women had a very different set of issues and challenges surviving in that world as compared to today. All right? And you cannot understand this through your modern, a modern day woman's point of view. That was not the case back when this was all written. Okay, so hopefully that helped. Okay? So I'm not disagreeing with you that that would be incredibly brutal and challenging. All right? But what would be the alternative? The alternative is that she's now basically screwed, literally, completely out of, she's just in bad shape. Nobody's going to want her to go near her, to touch her, this, everything else. So this forces, at least, the situation. And remember, this is preemptively, this is the theory, for example, of capital punishment. It's supposed to discourage the act that requires capital punishment. That's why they were told, if you do this, we're going to stone you. The point wasn't so that if you did it, we would stone you. The point is that you wouldn't do it so we don't stone you. Okay? This is so men would know, hey, if you're going to do this, understand you're going to be stuck with that woman and that child forever. Well, for the rest of your life. Okay? That may discourage some of the bad behavior. All right? Okay? And maybe I'm off on this. I'm going to guess here. I don't think rape being described here is just speaking about what we normally think of as the violent act because rape isn't a sexual act as much as a violent act, okay? That has sex attached to it, but it's a violent act. This is talking about a man that would take somebody else's virginity, all right, and leave you with a baby or whatever. You need to know that you're going to have to take care of that woman. So I know you're thinking when you see the word rape, some awful, horrible psycho just, jumping out of nowhere and grabbing you and raping you. That's not necessarily what it's talking about here. It's talking about within their society, somebody forced you to have sex that you maybe didn't want, still rape, but not quite the same as this. But that guy may not do such a thing thinking that he's now going to be stuck with you and the child or whatever happens after that. You understand? Where a guy may just think, hey, I can just take advantage of you. Well, not if the price is that high. The person that's psycho, that's going to do the violent thing, they're still going to do that anyway because their heads are completely off. None of this is going to discourage that, okay? And I'm sure they had a way to handle that. It doesn't say anything in here, but that's going to, they're not going to put the woman just in a dangerous place just because the law says, well, he raped you, so now he's got to take care of you. That's going to be a whole different problem, okay? Because then, I could be off here. Elder was a police officer, he knows. I don't think in those kind of rapes, they're without violent beating up and everything else. Okay, they're not just sexual. So that person's going to have other issues scripturally for beating her up, okay? As opposed to just being unwanted sex. So those kind of crazies, I think there was a scriptural way to handle beyond that. Does that hopefully help a little bit? Okay? But this was meant to discourage unwanted sex where you're trying to just take advantage of somebody knowing that, well, then you're going to get, you're going to have to really take care of them. So maybe you think twice before you do this kind of thing, or more than twice.
All right, from Tina Wolf, could you please expound on Psalm 119, 109?
So it says here, my life is in my hand continually, and your Torah I have not forgotten. Okay? It's just another way of him saying, I find myself at a place where I'm in danger of death. David continuously in the Psalm and in other Psalms talks about how he's under attack all the time. And he was, and often by family members, okay? And so, he's saying, look, but your Torah I've not forgotten. He says, even though there are all these threats to my life, I've not forgotten your Torah.
All right. From Lily, during one of your past teachings, we read where it said Yeshua healed during the Sabbath because that's not considered quote unquote working. Therefore, he didn't break Shabbat. Would it be okay to folks that are sick during Shabbat?
So understand that the answer is it's fine, okay? But let's kind of package this in a full answer. Do only on Shabbat, okay, what is Shabbat worthy and cannot be put off necessarily to another day, okay? So if you could visit that person after sundown or on Sunday or on Friday before sundown, why wouldn't you just do it that way? Now, if it's a congregation member, a covenanted person, and you want to be with them and spend some Shabbat with them, absolutely go visit them. Because now you're not just visiting them because they're sick, you're visiting someone because they would be blessed to have someone with them on Shabbat because they keep Shabbat. Do you see the difference? But an average person who's not keeping anything, I'll wait to visit them on Sunday because they're not going to want to focus on Shabbat when I'm visiting them. They're not going to focus on Yah when I'm visiting them, right? I'll wait till after sundown or I'll visit them the next day or a different day, okay? So I'm only going to go visit sick people on Shabbat that are Shabbat keepers, okay? Or if that's the only time I get to see the person who's about to go into surgery, who might die and it's a family member, whatever, then I might go see them. You understand what I'm saying? Because then I really can't see them afterwards because they may not make it and they need me to show up. Some emergency has happened, all right? So again, it has to do with those kind of parameters.
All right. From another one for Messenger. My granddaughter spends a lot of time with me after school. Is it okay to teach about God and Yeshua and to pray since her parents are not religious? She is 6 and curious why her mom does not.
Okay, grandparenting is some of the toughest people to counsel here, your grandparents. That child is not yours. That's number one. You must respect what the mother, the parents actually would like you to do or not. So this is a question for them. And then you have to respect the answer, okay? So when you say, is it okay to teach about God? Only if the mother says so, or the father. I mean, whichever one is your child, okay? The parent of that child. You can't do anything spiritual, religious-wise with a child that's not your child. Okay, unless you have permission. Unless you want to get in a big fight, okay? Because you would not like grandma teaching your child Christmas and Easter if you happen to leave your child over there, would you? So take it the other way around. You're just thinking of it differently because you think you're right. Well, they think they're right, okay? You grandparents need to respect the child's parents, not you. It's not your authority. Oh, but it's my kid. No, it's not your kid. You're a distant relative. I don't care if you think you're that close. You are not the parent, okay? And when I say distant, I mean there's leaps of distance between mom and dad and everybody else, okay? I don't care if you think grandparent is or uncle or aunt. No. There's miles of distance, okay? Authority-wise, okay? So this is a question you need to ask the parent, all right? Okay, and by the way, remember what I've already said multiple times this weekend already. How you live is the best teaching that you can give that child, right? How you live, watching you live. And she doesn't need to watch you pray, because whatever. Prayer is a whole personal sort of thing. But just watching that you do certain things different than maybe mom and dad do, whatever. Just live. Don't do anything on purpose for them to watch. Just live. Walk this out. Let them see the blessing of it. All right? And the other thing is, this is very important, please, don't give in to this fear that if you don't do all of this, that child's going to get ruined in some way or not get to the kingdom or whatever it is. I can promise you right now, there's a limited amount of effect on what you do and where that child ends up. I don't care how perfect you do it, because the child still has to walk their journey out and have their moment. Okay? One day they're all going to realize, I don't know why I'm doing this. Is it just because my parents did this or my grandparents did this? Is it because I want to do this? What about all the other things that are out there and the people that aren't doing this? Are they right and we're wrong? Are we wrong? Is everybody wrong? Is anybody right? I mean, all kinds of questions you asked when you were a teenager into young adulthood or whatever. Okay? And so they're going to need to do these things for themselves and figure these things out for themselves. And you, this is the hard part, need to let them do it. You need to let them do it. Because some of you are like, oh, I'm going to raise them and they're going to just, no. You're going to raise them and they're going to do whatever they're going to do. It may be what you raise them, it may not be what you raise them. They're still going to do what they are going to do. Okay? And if they end up going in a wrong direction, according to the way you see things, that won't be your fault. And if they end up going in the right direction, it won't be to your glory and honor either. They're going to make their own choices. What you need to do is live it as best you can in front of them. And then that's when they finally do get their bubbles popped and they have their experience, and they'll know where to go to get some answers. You understand? They have to do the journey. All of you did. It can't be because it's all they knew. It can't be because that's how they were raised. It can't be you have to have that iron testing where you put that iron in the fire and it gets tested. Okay? And so, do the best you can, you know. I raised both my children that way. I did the best I can. They're going to make their own choices, okay? And, you know, I get no credit if they go in what I would think is the right direction, or very limited credit. And I really don't get any, blame if they choose to go in a different direction, okay? Unless I did things to kind of, help that along, but I haven't, okay? I've just done what I've done. They're going to make their own choices, okay? And just understand that, just like you did, just like you're doing right now.
All right, from Sarisha Critchlow, Rabbi, if I use second tithe before it's needed for the feast to address an emergency, do I add 1/5 when I put it back?
Yes. All right, next.
All right, another one for Messenger. Are the present Israeli leadership in the land acting like adversaries?
No comment. No, don't laugh. I have no comment because I have no idea what they're doing. I don't pay attention. You might be like, I don't pay attention to what those leaders do and what the Knesset does and how they vote on this and that or whatever. I pay no attention to what's going on in the land from that point of view. I know looking at the land, it certainly doesn't look like what Yah had in mind. Not the way they're behaving there and the things that they allow there and everything else that's going on. So somebody's acting like an adversary, okay? I mean, if you want to see whether or not it looks like whatever Yah would have in mind, just look at Jerusalem. Would he want it to be that divided, messed up sort of craziness? Of course not, okay? So I don't pay a whole lot of attention. Some of you may be really appalled by that. I'm sorry, okay? I'm of what Israel is in this book, not Israel that 1948 the world decided to create for themselves. And it doesn't match this the way it's supposed to anyway, okay? So I don't get wrapped up in that. I pay attention to the bigger things that are happening because at some point it's going to be ground zero for what's going on in this book. So I'm watching for those things, okay? And right now I'm aware of the stuff that's happening between them with the people around them, with Hamas, and then of course with Iran and everything else. I'm aware of all that, right? But I'm not involved in, beyond Netanyahu, I couldn't name you another leader there. When you say, well, the leaders there, are they this, that? I don't know the names of anybody. I know who's in charge, that's it. Whoever the person sitting at the executive position is, I just know his name. I don't know all the things that he's done, except when his name pops up in some of the feeds and some of the things that I get to watch when I'm trying to keep abreast of what's happening in the world in general. Big picture stuff.
All right, from Ancient Path Soul, can you recommend anything to better understand about driving or not driving on Shabbat, please?
Okay, so let's take the question from a different direction. Why wouldn't you drive on Shabbat? Well, you wouldn't drive on Shabbat if you're going to work, because you shouldn't be working. You wouldn't drive on Shabbat to go shopping, because you wouldn't be shopping. So why would you drive on Shabbat? So there's only two things you would be doing on Shabbat, either visiting somebody who also keeps Shabbat that needs someone to visit them, or going to services. Now, if that place doesn't happen to be in a walking distance place, or you don't happen to be physically capable of that, then you would drive on Shabbat. Now, the reason you're asking the question is probably because the Orthodox Jews don't drive on Shabbat, okay? Well, at least that's the rules that they give. I know lots of Orthodox Jews that are as worldly as anybody else, but they would still tell you they're Orthodox Jews, okay? It's like anybody else. If you were to claim something that if you were to do it, that's the flavor you would do, okay? All right? So that being said, the question comes because of them, because they would believe that turning on the car is sparking the engine with the combustion is creating a fire, and you're not supposed to create a fire. That's not what the create a fire problem is. And then, by the way, there's probably an in focus on that and other things when I taught it in the Sabbath teaching, that we're talking about creating a fire for work. Okay, they remember that the verse where that comes up about not creating a fire is in the section where we're talking about building the tabernacle, and to say, look, you don't make a work fire on Shabbat. Okay, and we're not cooking anything on Shabbat, so don't make a cooking fire. Did they have fire for warmth? I'm sure they did. They didn't have any other way to keep warm, so I'm sure they did have at night and especially in the winter. I'm sure they had fires to keep warm, but that wasn't to cook or work. Okay? So, the same idea I just told you. You're not driving for working or for going to purchase things, doing business.
All right, from Charles Bayens, is intimacy with my wife acceptable during her cycle?
That is very specifically in Scripture. The answer is no. Okay? All right. Now, one might say that again was linked to the temple laws. Okay, because that's where the laws that we call it nida, or bleeding, those laws, okay, are related to the temple. Look, I don't know, maybe it's just me. That sounds kind of gross, period. I mean, end of story. I'm not sure why we're asking the question. I'm not picking on you. You have 3 other weeks. Okay? I mean, okay? Why do we need to use that time? All right? So anyway, just seems to me to make sense. All right, you don't need to be using that one period of time. And also, they're not necessarily during that period of time thrilled with anything and everything. I mean, they're in some hormonally challenged moments and issues and pains and this and whatever else goes on during that time. It's it's somewhat unpleasant. All right? And certainly the aroma can make you, okay? It's not something you need to be, I don't know why this question comes up. It comes up often enough, though, okay? You guys all laugh. It's just the realities of what we deal with, okay? And I don't have any problem with any of those things in general. It's just not something that makes me think, oh, I think I want to be intimate, I can wait. It's just one of those things. All right, next question. It was a good question. I mean, people ask it on a regular enough basis. Scripturally, I would say no. Okay? Now, if you want to believe it was only linked to the temple, that's fine. Then you're probably okay with that, I guess. But I mean, look, let's use this format. When it's not necessary, why would you do it? So if I can be more conservative and say, well, I know that there's no temple, so, But you know what? The temple is things like, if I come into contact with you while you're on your cycle, it doesn't make me unclean in any way that messes with there being a temple or not. That's not the same thing as the instruction says, do not be intimate while she's on her cycle. That's a straightforward commandment. All right? So, don't do it.
All right, from Roberta Hansel, was the Garden of Eden destroyed with the flood?
We have no information about what happened with it, or except that it was guarded when Adam was thrown out of it, and that's all we have. So I think it's actually like, how Central Park is the Central Park in Manhattan? I think the garden was the central sort of park in Atlantis. And I just want to see if you guys are awake. I just want to see if you're awake. So it's all underwater in the Bermuda Triangle. Okay, so, all right? I have no idea what happened to the garden.
All right, and this is the last one that we've got, Rabbi, from Shrisha Critchlow. A question from our daughter. Did Saul start behaving irrationally because he was scared to lose the throne, or he was jealous of David?
I think there was a lot of things that were going on with Saul. Power can be very much, as often is said, power corrupts, and you start feeling that everybody's a threat to your power, to your authority, and those kind of things. There was lots of things happening. It does say that Yah gave him a disturbed spirit at some point, and that was because he was not listening. Okay, so it seems like this came from above more than anything else. Okay, but it could have been, again, taking where he was already going and just kind of encouraging it along to where it would ultimately be where he'd lose his mind a little bit. Okay, so I'd have to go again and look at things like, looking at Kings and Samuel, etc., and read about these things, and then, give you a better answer. But I think it's more a punishment from above, okay, the way it kind of plays out and reads.
The Shekinah, when it was in the Ark of the Covenant. It
wasn't in the Ark, it was above the Ark, but yes.
Okay, above the Ark. Okay, so I don't understand if Elohim was here in Genesis chapter 1, but because of sin and death, he could not abide with us and does not come back until Revelation 22. Can you please help me to understand how his glory was able to be here?
You have, at least we know that there are two members of this Elohim thing, right? You have the Father and the Son. And we have the Son interacting in different levels of manifestation with the creation between Genesis and Revelation, okay? There's a level of manifestation that Moses wanted to see, and Yah said no, but I'll put you in the cleft of the rock and cover you, and you can kind of see me from behind, okay? But you're not going to get a direct look at me because that's just not going to work. Because Moses wanted to see that level of manifestation, not just the level like when the level that he had when he sat down, when Yahweh sat down with Abraham and had lunch, okay? And so apparently there are multiple degrees or levels of manifestation that he can take. So what you're asking is, what's that whole deal going on above the ark? Well, this is a level of manifestation specific to that particular function. Does that help? Does that answer it?
Okay, kind of. It was just I didn't understand because how I can't remember his name, but when they were carrying the ark,
Uzzah.
Yeah, and he went to go and, in his opinion, save the ark from hitting the ground. He was struck dead, but then I think that there's another reason why he got struck dead other than just touching the ark. Is that correct?
No, it's because he touched the ark. Maybe there is some other reason. I've never been aware of another reason. Okay, it was very clear who's allowed to touch the ark. The ark had no business being on a cart anyway. Okay, so everything about that situation was wrong. Okay, but he was not one that was with authority to be carrying the ark. Okay, there were those who were only ones who are there to carry the ark, and he was not one of them. All right, but we're dealing with different levels of manifestation of this creator being that interacts with man on whatever level it interacts with man. Okay?
Okay, I had just assumed that the Shekinah was a part of him in the above, and that's the part I couldn't understand. So if I understand it now, I appreciate that. Thank you.
Right, but what I point out is, first of all, we're trying to understand something that as I've often said, like an amoeba trying to understand a human being, okay? So we're trying to kind of box in and quantify this thing that is just so above and beyond what we can really understand, okay? And so having said that, this becomes where, well, he, Father, Son, whichever, presence is doing this, or this is doing that, or this is coming from where. Okay, when we say the above is just out there. Okay, whichever direction, it's out there, it's everywhere. But it's out there, it's above us. It's a higher level, it's a whole nother thing, right? So we could look at this from so many different ways through our very limited human, physical, finite senses, our faculties and what we're able to do. And so that's where we really get bogged down, okay? Real good. Zone 1.